I'm Mike Zima, a digital marketing expert, and today I'm going to talk about the collapse of digital marketing in 2020. This is going to be a slow-moving freight train, but we're already starting to see the first brushstrokes of it. I'm going to let Simon Poulton address the first point.
Hey, I'm Simon Poulton. I am the Vice President of Digital Intelligence at WPromote. And today I'm going to talk about some of my thoughts about 2020 and the road ahead. I think one of the biggest trends that we've seen in 2019 is actually the increased focus on user privacy. Obviously, we've seen technology, but we've also seen some legislation around this space, particular things like CCPA. We know that's going to come in very early, but I think the biggest thing facing digital marketers from a measurement point of view is the way intelligent tracking prevention, or ITP, is going to impact the way that we can handle attribution and the way that we think about just the ability to measure across Safari. It doesn't sound like a big deal to a lot of folks, but we think that we're going to see about 30 to 40% of data being lost for Safari users in the future, which is going to make it really hard as we think about the future of, should we invest in these platforms? Where do we go from here? It's a very hard decision to make for a lot of marketers.
Intelligent tracking prevention is nothing new. We've all seen ad blockers on browsers, and that was the first generation of blocking advertisers and marketers from getting their product in front of you. But along the way, they've got really clever in how they track people online, and this is why Safari could be one of the first major browsers that's enabling the privacy on the user side and preventing the dissemination of data for the agency. So that's going to make it a lot harder for agencies to attribute the marketing. People are coming from different channels. If you're running paid advertising, it's going to get a lot more difficult to credit them, and we're going to start seeing different models and different tools in the place of that to allow it to happen. But if you're blocked and the tracking is blocked by default, it's going to be hard to come up with clever strategies to do this. So this is nothing new. Privacy has been growing and rising, and there's legislations. A part of being a digital marketer today is you have to be familiar with the legislation and you have to keep up with the rules. That's why Firefox actually is preventing tracking by third-party advertisers by implementing this as a default. So there's options in the marketplace that are growing that are going to make it harder for digital marketers, and it's going to make it harder for small businesses to drive those results. So that's why it's really important to build on your brand. But last year in the video I did in November, Tim Berners-Lee came out with a course correction of the internet, and it focuses on three aspects where governments will ensure everyone can connect to the internet. Anyone can afford it. Walk into the conversation how companies are responsible in safeguarding privacy and its users online, and how users have to take an advantageous role in the internet and create the internet with these companies and these governments, because it's for the user, it's for the people. Which is interesting when we saw the Great Firewall and the Great Ice Wall merge on a UN legislation that was passed in late December. This is a UN-backed legislation which was spearheaded by Russia and backed by China to create a new sort of internet treaty. Basically, there's no sort of treaty online that safeguards communications and also criminal activities. So they're trying to start the first moment in time that the UN could actually start governing the internet as a global body. And this is interesting coming from countries that have very closed off internets, because last year in December, Russia actually turned off its internet on a Monday for an entire day, and they disconnected. So it's really interesting that not only are we seeing increased legislation on the internet, not only is the power going to the user, but the internet in essence is being developed in a way where it can be fragmented. And another interesting development by fragmentation is Ahrefs is an interesting SEO tool that we use, and they announced the search engine in 2019, and they're trying to create their own version of the web that works off different parameters and actually has a better experience in thinking about these tracking and privacy concerns. Of course, the future of the internet has to have that baked in. So we're seeing an interesting development in marketing today. So if you're keeping up with the trends, if you're basically lawyering up yourself and learning about the legislations and seeing how that impacts your clients, you're going to have a competitive edge, but you're going to have to study and spend more time learning about how all the ins and outs work, and you have to be aware of your tracking, whether it's working or not, because if you're not tracking and you're vulnerable to losing a lot of your advertising dollars if you don't have the possible systems in place. So make sure you're aware of this and upcoming trends in 2020.